You may remember, of course, the big proclaimment during the referendum campaign of 2016 that there was going to be this amazing renewal for global Britain, that once again, Britain was going to start sailing out into the world and solving all the world's problems and being a global player. and yet, time and time again, as we always point out here, the UK is not a world leading superpower in able to do anything on so many issues. Alone, it can do almost next to nothing. Look at Ukraine. Britain, Russia is just not going to suddenly stop because the UK comes along and says, okay, Russia, you need to stop this, finish this now. Russia's not going to pay any attention. And don't get me wrong, I am really glad, and probably one of the only good things Boris Johnson did in his entire premiership was to go and rally international support for Ukraine to help get them weapons and supplies over into Ukraine. That was the only good thing he did. And to be honest, it wasn't even really him. It was Ben Wallace who had to force him into doing that in the first place. But hey, sometimes you're going to give credit where it's due. And in this case, in the what we can only call this the Israeli Gaza ongoing violence at the moment, it just goes to show you how MPs at the moment are completely powerless in the face of this. They can say all the things that they want, but the reality is the UK is completely and utterly powerless in this. It can do nothing that would help stop this war. So before we go more into this and why not only is this yet a failure for global Britain, but also hopefully might be a potential idea that the UK maybe could do, but to do that, it would have to rally international support. It would have to be, rather than a main player, it would have to be a bit part player in coalition with other countries to try and get this sorted out. And remember, global Britain and a lot of stuff that was fed to people during the referendum was, we're really still a superpower, as if, we've still got, the British Empire and the largest fleet sailing around the world, etc. No, no, not anymore. One of the things that is being vastly, I think, really realized by a lot of conservative MPs, especially, is the lack of power that Britain really wielded on the world stage, and it is diminishing even faster because of Brexit and because of the ongoing chaos that we have seen here. And it is only going to diminish even further. And a lot of conservatives are incredibly concerned about that. And I always say this, there is nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong with being a middle of the road European power. There's nothing wrong with that. Hey, it works very well for countries like Sweden, Denmark. They're fine with it. Who cares about being a world beating superpower? But apparently that really matters to a lot of conservatives. But maybe they'll learn a lesson from this. Maybe this will finally remove their rose-tinted glasses for a moment and maybe realize that the UK isn't really the superpower that it once was. So, before we go more into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, there is the YouTube Pony Club as well down below, and the YouTube thank you button as well. So, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. So, in about the past 24 hours or so now, Rishi Sunak went to Israel to go and see Benjamin Netanyahu. And I generally have to ask the question, why? Like Biden, I can understand. Biden, I can understand going to Israel. It sends quite a big message about the support, being backed up by America. But Rishi Sunak going, I don't understand what that even achieves. And even if you could say, oh well, he's there to put pressure on Israel, you know, not to go into this too hard, um, almost aggressive stance that they are going currently on Gaza. Um, Maybe you can say, oh, that's why he went to do that. But even then, why on earth should this why on earth should Israel listen, or at least Benjamin Netanyahu, who's desperate to try and restore his reputation as being like the big, security guy? Why on earth would he listen to Rishi Sunak, the guy who's probably not going to be Prime Minister of the UK in the next 12 months? It doesn't send, to be honest, a message. It, to be honest, seems to be a colossal waste of Rishi Sunak's time, because I don't see the purpose of him going. I really don't. I do not see any grand change from, Israel suddenly going, oh my God, yes, Rishi Sunak. Yes, you are right. We've got to, stop this and finally, get around the negotiating table and start talking. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. That is not going to happen because Rishi Sunak suddenly went, you know, to Israel. It's not going to happen. And also, we've had the bombing of the hospital. Now, both sides are claiming that they didn't do it. It was the other side that did it. We don't know. We might never know, to be honest, the truth of this. And unfortunately, that's the reality. But the more the fact, of course, that this tragedy happened in the first place was because of Hamas's attack, which again provoked this overwhelming Israel response, which they knew would happen. Hamas knew there would be such a response from Israel. They knew it, and they were counting on that response. And they want this land invasion to take place. And Rishi Sunak is not going to stop it. Biden could. We saw recently in the UN about opening up humanitarian corridors. The US voted it down. You know, it's this is honestly a colossal mess that can only really be sorted out by both these sides sitting down and really negotiating about this, and negotiating in good faith and saying, we are going to do this and we are going to stick to our guns on this. And if someone doesn't, then outside parties will ensure that, we are following through on this. Like the UN. But of course, as we've seen in the past, whenever the Palestinians have gone, hey, Israel's doing this to us, can we have a vote on it, please? America instantly vetoes it. And it's not just that, of course, going on in the UN, but you've also got, as I've always said, from this conflict kicking off, the two biggest spoilers for peace in the Middle East are Hamas and a right-wing Israeli government. Now, bizarre as it may seem, this might actually break the back of Hamas and its ability to be able to govern in the West Bank. Now, if it does that, Hamas will lose a lot of power. And hopefully, maybe the Palestinian Authority can come in and maybe take over. That will be a lot better for, the people in Gaza. The other thing is that will probably ultimately topple Benjamin Netanyahu, which maybe also will get rid of that right-wing Israeli government. Now, if you do that, then you can start to have both sides sit down at the table, really sort of talk about the issues, and then, of course, get international support and get in on this to do this, because the only way this really gets sorted is with really hard, tough negotiations, and generally an outside force that will go, Israel, you're breaking the rules, or whatever, you're breaking the rules, you shouldn't do that, you're being punished for it. And I don't know how you work that out. I don't know whether it is the UN that becomes that outside force. It's really difficult, and it's not an easy solution. I will admit I don't have the full answers for this. I'm fully prepared to admit that, because it's a really difficult situation to think about and talk about. But ultimately, this shows the powerlessness of MPs, the failure of this grand plan of global Britain that Brexit was meant to unleash. And then, just to give, shall we say, fair, um, fair commentary, I do also have to say, Diane Abbott, why on earth would Israel and Hamas stop their conflict as well? Because Britain is going to send an independent team to verify what went on here and find out the cause, like who was responsible. It's just as useless as Rishi Sunak going to Israel. So at least you can see here there are people on both sides who are exemplifying why this whole grand plan of global Britain, that we were going to become this massive global player, it's not going to work. Never was going to work. The reality is the UK is a mid-level European power. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with admitting that. But for some people, it's a really big issue. But hey, there you go. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.